said, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us. We are meeting in our council chambers today as we have some electronic issues going on in our work session room. So we'll be having our work session here anyway, and our business meeting as well tonight. Okay. So my name is Mike Wickers. I'm the mayor of Cottonwood Heights. Today is Tuesday, August 5th, 2025, and this is the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session. The first item of business is to review our business meeting for this evening. Tonight, we will start, as always, with a Pledge of Allegiance. I think Barb looks ready for that. You okay with that, Barb? Thank you. Okay, we'll have Barbara lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. We'll have a citizen comment period, and then we have 6 potential action items. And we'll start with item 4.1. And Jared, item 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3, we're looking at continuing, but I'm going to let Jared address that.
Yeah, this was continued to have the applicant go back and do some further. He was asking to go to 15 feet on that west side, if you remember, of the property. So we asked him to go back and actually take a look at it and see if he really needed to do that, if he could make it work with the 25, which was kind of the agreement to begin with. Adam has subsequently communicated with me that he is actually out of town and would like to ask this be continued to the August 19th meeting.
Great.
So we'll need to continue it in the item if that's what you choose to do in the business meeting.
Comments from the council? So if that's okay, we'll just do a motion to continue until the August 19th, August 19th meeting. Okay, and that's item 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. Item 4.4 is a consideration of resolution 2025-59 declaring certain property surplus. So Chief Russo, do you want to talk about the surplus, property surplus we're going to vote on this evening?
Sure. These are items that are taken in as evidence or found property and held in the evidence room after a period of time. They're not needed for court.
Chief, these are the surplus firearms, sidearms.
Oh, just that part?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing the other next time.
All right. All right. Even easier. So these are items that are seized as evidence or found or turned over for safekeeping to the police department and are not being returned to the owners or needed as evidence, correct?
These are the 6 or so surplus sidearms.
I got to get in. Okay. I have no idea what I'm talking about. These are the office owned. Okay. I got confused because we put in a surplus thing for evidence. Okay.
We're cleaning house.
What's that?
I said we're cleaning house. So there's lots of lists.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me see if I can not embarrass myself any further and tell you that these are items that are in our armory and we are looking to surplus them, and we trade these into a local dealer that supplies us with more current modern firearms. These are weapons that we've had since 2008. We trade them in for other weapons with better sighting systems. And for instance, some of these weapons are 45 caliber and we don't use those any longer. And we use 9mm. So, okay.
Great.
And I got through that without Shane having to correct me even more.
Any questions from the council? Great. Thank you, Chief. Item 4.5, consideration of resolution 2025-60, approving an appointment to the Health in the Heights Advisory Committee. Jared, and this is for Eva Chan, right?
Yeah, and I think some of you have met Ava. She's raring to go and ready to. I think she actually attended last night's Health in the Heights meeting. I'm really excited to be involved, and this was my bad. This should have been on the last meeting, and I missed it, so we're getting her on this one.
Right. Comments from the council? Okay. Item 4.6, consideration of resolution 2025-61, approving an appointment to the Historic Committee. And this is for Hazel Peterson to fill a vacancy.
Yeah, and I had a chance to interview and talk with Hazel a couple weeks ago. She seems like a great fit. She's actually involved in the Daughters of the American Revolution. Utah Pioneers, a whole bunch of other organizations that are historical in nature. So she seems like she'll fit right in and is a great addition to this committee.
Great. Questions from the council? Okay. We will, and then we'll approve the consent calendar, which is our work session and business meeting minutes for July 15th. 2025. Okay, we're going to move back to our work session agenda and go to item 3. Our first item under reports is item A, which is a historic committee report from our historic committee chair, Jim Kitchus. So we're going to invite Jim up to the podium. We're excited to have him. We were unbelievably appreciative for him and for the work that this committee does. We love and appreciate them greatly. So we're excited to hear your report.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I always appreciate being able to come and tell you what we've been working on in the Historic Committee and what we have ahead of us. So, yep, I'll go ahead and I've got the slide deck that we put together for this. This year was a bit of a year of turnover for us as a committee. We had more committee members leave and come on than any point that since I've been involved in the committee, which goes back to 2017. With that, we have lost a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of city history knowledge. Luckily, the members who have left have still been very gracious in helping us answer questions that come in, help us with different things here and there. But I will say that the new folks on the committee have all been really great. They're bringing new energy and fresh perspectives that I think are really helping us with the initiatives that we have as a group. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on with my presentation time, was just talking about some of the areas that we've been working on as a committee this year, and then a look ahead at where we're looking in 2026. So next slide. One of the big areas of focus for us this year was to do something that helped celebrate the 20th anniversary of the city. And in talking about it as a group, we kind of landed on doing a refresh of the historic signs that are around the city. A lot of them have they've taken some punishment over time from the sun, from just time kind of making them lean. Different things have happened to them. So we went out and conducted an inventory of all the signs throughout the city. There are 46 of them that are eligible for replacement or are areas where we feel like a sign is needed and was not included in the first place. So breaking that up, we proposed a phased project that would phase over the next 3 to 4 years the replacement of 12 signs, with this year really focusing on the ones that needed the most help. They're either so bleached out by the sun or so crooked that we really needed to get those ones replaced. And so working with the city, this is the design that looks very similar to what we've already had up, but we're looking forward to having these put in throughout the city. And there are a couple of areas that will be getting signs that didn't have them before. So one will be the Union Pioneer Cemetery, a very historic site in our city. We wanted to make sure that was marked. One thing we're also going to be working on a lot in the months and the year ahead is actually building out some resources on the city website, so that when you go to that web address, you'll get more contextual information of what historic Union was. That's one thing we identified as kind of a problem with the signs. And by the nature of the signs themselves, you can't pack a lot of history onto the sign. People are driving by pretty fast. So if we can give them the web address and get them going to the city website and getting them, finding info on what the sign is talking about, we think that would be a good addition. So that was one big initiative we put forward. Next slide. Another one is we have been working on putting in a new monument about Butlerville that will be kind of at that intersection. I don't know if that's clear, but the intersection of Fort Union and 27th East, right where Butler Elementary School is. For this one, this was a collaboration. We were able to receive funding from UDOT and Rocky Mountain Power to help support this. And we worked with the Canyon School District to identify this spot right on the corner that we think will be a really, really nice spot for that monument. Right now, we're just kind of working with Ann and the city to finalize things, but the language on the sign is really going to focus on giving history of the Butler area, why it's called Butler. That's a question we've probably fielded the most at Butlerville Days. Why is it called Butlerville Days? So this is going to be an actual monument we can point people to and say, go here and learn more. It's going to highlight the area. the history of irrigation, which is so pivotal to community settlement here, the history of the school itself, the church across the street, which was the location of the first elementary school, and then a little bit of history on that dormitory building that's right behind, which is now a private residence, but it is one of our buildings in the city that is on the National Historic Register. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of tie all of this in as we highlight that area. And one thing the committee has been discussing, and the monument builder who we're working with has experience in this, is potentially putting a time capsule in the back of that monument so that we could have something to look forward to in the future of opening and seeing what's in there. Next up, I wanted to touch on our Butlerville Days exhibit and the work that we put in as a committee this year on that. One of the big things we kind of went for this year, which was a little bit of a change, was we wanted to unify everything around a theme, which we do every year. This theme we really wanted to focus, or this year we wanted to focus the theme on this idea of building community and the 20th anniversary of the city. The new sort of feature for us was trying to tie in all of our monthly newsletter content into that in some meaningful way, so that we would have content to pull from as we built the exhibit, but everything sort of came together and made sense for the folks who were looking at the exhibit. Very happy with how it turned out. Those are the panels that we ended up putting together. And we're going to go ahead and repurpose these for the fall exhibit that we do every year here in City Hall. So these panel exhibits that we had at Butlerville Days will go up for that. Overall, haven't had a chance to debrief with the committee yet. We have our first meeting post Butlerville Days next week, but just talking sort of anecdotally with the folks on the committee at Butlerville Days, everyone felt like we had a really, really great response this year. Lots of community engagement and interaction, lots of questions. We sold more books than we've ever sold, which was very nice. I think dropping the price point down to $10 was very, people were excited to pick up the book for that. So yeah, we feel like the exhibit went very, very well this year. Next up, I wanted to just give a highlight on, one thing that we're continuing to build out, and I think that makes us pretty special as a city, is having a digital archives in place where we can continue to put in historic material that we can then point out to people, we can use for exhibits. It really is it's growing to be a pretty dynamic space that, when we had people actually on their phones just pulling things up at Butlerville Days this year, which is always exciting to see, people getting their hands right on the history. The big efforts or pushes that we did for the digital archives this year, we really did want to focus again on this 20th anniversary of the city. So we did find different incorporation records that are now available through there. The other exciting thing that we found is actual community council records going back to 1993. So those materials have been digitized and put online. So now we have the agendas and meeting minutes for the community council, which was the precursor to the city council, going back to the early 90s. And the closer you get to 2005, the more you see that discussion ramping up about incorporation, about what it takes to plan a city. So really, really good documentary evidence of all the work that was done to get us to where we're at as a city. So we're just going to continue to focus on this and work on building out our resources in this space. And then the last slide I have is just looking ahead to 2026 and some of the projects and areas of focus that we're going to be putting time in as a committee. One area that a couple of our committee members have expressed a pretty great interest in is trying to go back and do some primary source research on the construction of I-215. That's a very important historical moment, the completion of that interstate. So that's something that I think we'll be putting some time and effort into. Another is the property ownership and building and business history of Hillside Plaza. We anticipate as the Heights comes more into focus, that is going to be an area of a lot of interest. People are going to want to know the history. So we want to try and get out ahead of that and get resources in place so that we can just point people to, this is the history of Hillside Plaza, and you can just go to it and look at it yourself and learn away. And then the last area that we're going to put some time and effort into is on the history of water and irrigation in our city and how all of that infrastructure has come to be, been put in place, and something we all rely on. I also just note that we continue to have really good discussions and interfacing with other groups. I was able to present to the Parks and Trails Committee earlier this year and made some good connections there. We've been talking a little bit with them about some possible collaborations that our two committees could have over the coming year that could be very exciting. And then other history groups around the Valley who are doing similar things to us, share similar missions, have really been engaging with us and wanting to know, well, what are you guys doing to be successful? And likewise, we're asking them questions. So I see that as another area where we'll be doing a lot of collaborating over the coming years with Midvale, with Holiday, with Murray, just talking to them and trying to learn from each other and continue to improve things. So with that was what I had prepared, but I'd be happy to answer any questions or yeah.
Questions from the council?
Well, I'd firstly like to say that both your exhibit during Butlerville Days was wonderful. I had
Thank
my
you.
2 grandchildren there and you had ways to entertain them while I could stand and walk around. The exhibit was so well thought out.
Thank you.
And I also went on your historic walk that you do in collaboration with PTOS, and it was fantastic.
Excellent.
It was so chock full of great information. I'm sure, as you well know, please pass along again big kudos to Gail Conger. She is such a gem. I know she's coming off the committee, but her contribution, as each of you are just astounding people. And so thank you
Thank
for
you.
all you do. This is a huge contribution and support to the strength of our city.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please pass along to the committee our thanks.
Yes.
You know, we value every minute that you all give of your time for this committee.
I will.
I promise it's valued, and I hope you feel that from the council.
We do. We feel the support. Thank you.
And tell them thank you, and we're looking forward. Thank you for including the birthday celebration this
Yeah.
year. That's awesome, and
Yes.
we look forward to the rest of the year. But thank you, Jim. We
Okay.
really appreciate you coming.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so we are going to move on to kind of a fun item, and it's item B under reports. It's listed as the Cottonwood Canyon Cove Park naming discussion. So we have special guests here. One of my favorite people in our city, Jim Peters, is here, and his wife. And so we're excited for you to come up, and I guess we're going to turn some time over to him first, or do you want to lead that before we get to Jim?
No, I'm good with Jim going first.
Okay, Jim, you want to come up, and Jim is going to give us a little bit of background. He's been there for a long, long time, and so this is his neck of the woods. Jim and I spent a lot of time on the phone together in the beginning when this concept was coming about, and so we
You
appreciate
people
his
look
contribution.
very serious. This is not all serious. Again, my name is Jim Peters, and Jan and I built our home in 1967. We live a few doors away from the park that we're talking about. At that time, the whole area was basically sagebrush. And so we've seen a lot of growth and a lot of change. And I appreciate the chance now to share a little bit about the original park and how it came to be, and along with its significance to the community. I think it might be worth considering as you select an appropriate name for this park. In the early days, the church identified several locations throughout the Butler Hill area that would be suitable for future building sites. And along with some of them, some adjacent possible recreation sites. Among those were 2 that bear on this. One was the property next to the Dover Hill Chapel, and the other was the property adjacent to the Nut Tree Chapel. And the local church authorities determined to build a ballpark in one of those. And the feeling at the time, the choice was the property adjacent to the Nut Tree Chapel was the best solution because it was flat. And it required very little grading. In addition, a developer had already approached them with the proposal to purchase the Dover Hill property. So it looked like it was pretty much a slam dunk. Members of the church and community made a case for the Dover Hill property, even though it would involve significant design work, major earth movement, grading, and surveying, none of which was needed at the Nut Tree property. Based on the aesthetics of the Dover Hill property and the commitment and determination of members of the community, the church elected in the end to build the park at the Dover Hill location. The park would not have existed had it not been for the commitment of these community members. And it's some examples. And this might absolutely amaze you. The dirt in the flat area of the park had been pushed up to the north to accommodate an irrigation ditch that ran from Big Cottonwood Canyon around Prospector and through the park, the north end of the park, past where the current church building was, to farm properties west of 35th that had water rights. So that dirt had all been pushed up so they could get the water to run down past 35th East. I say that because Oakland Construction provided at no cost a huge front-end loader and an operator over an entire summer to re-level over 9,000 cubic yards of soil. I kind of picture that. That is no small thing. Savage Brothers Excavating hauled away truckload after truckload of excess soil at no cost. And they were not just simply dump trucks. They were the huge side dump trucks. They hauled that all off at no cost. Soil for the infield was donated, provided at no cost. The final grading of the park was provided at no cost. The park design services were provided at no cost. Surveying services were provided at no cost. Design and installation of the irrigation system were provided at no cost. The church bought the materials, but all of the installation and design on it was at no cost. And they bought the materials at a heavily discounted rate. The grass seeding of the park was provided at no cost. Design, fabrication, and installation of the backstop were provided at no cost. A portion of the property had been donated to the church for the specific use at the park. The church, in credit to them, also constructed the bleachers, the flagpole, and the maintenance shed, and the pavilion, along with a number of other items. In 1976, each stake in the United States in the church was instructed to contribute to a bicentennial project. So the park was then called the Bicentennial Park. Even though the park was owned and maintained by the church, it became a central feature and gathering location for the entire community. 4 years ago, an arsonist set fire to the chapel. The church then determined to simply liquidate the entire 6 acres. In order to protect the asset, the church constructed a fence around the entire property, and that fence literally split the neighborhood, split the community. When it became known that the church intended to sell the property to a developer, a member of the community petitioned the church with over 1,500 signatures asking the church to give Cottonwood Heights first right of refusal. Mayor Peterson approached the church based on the premise that the community had an equity interest in preserving a portion of that property as open space. The church ended up agreeing with that premise, and that's why we now have a park. The park has its own story, but in addition, it's part of the general historical story of the Brighton Point area. I think an opportunity exists to use this park as a location to preserve not only the story of the park, but also some of the history of the Brighton Point area. For example, I know that there was a CCC camp right across Wasatch Boulevard. I'm sure the Historic Committee would love that idea. I'm suggesting that the park name could also reflect some of this history. Perhaps something like Brighton Point Park or Heritage Park or something. The preservation of a portion of the area as open space has already begun to establish a feeling of community that was once there. It's my opinion that the opportunity exists at this specific location to communicate not only the story of this specific park and the involvement of the community, but also the contribution of the church and of Ivory Homes and the history of the larger Brighton Point area. And as a visual aid, I figured you needed a visual aid. I have here some of the film work that was used to create the dedication plaque for the Bicentennial Park. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll do what I can to answer them, but that's the story as I know it. So
Jim, that was absolutely fascinating.
say that again.
That was just fascinating.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I had no idea that park came about basically because of community. You know, I
It
mean, all of
did.
the
It
services and
absolutely
product that were
did.
donated.
Because the church had decided
Yeah.
they were going to use the other property.
Yeah.
And it was no small commitment to say, oh, don't worry, we'll get it done.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned Mayor Peterson. He had a big hand in
Yeah, and
doing
I
this.
know you did too at the end.
Yeah, we did. That was one of the first votes that Councilmember Burrell and Newell and myself made
Yeah,
was
I'm aware of that. I should have mentioned it.
No. But a lot of that work had been done before. But I'm just grateful that we had the opportunity. I'm grateful to the church because that was not their original design. After a lot of public feedback, I was grateful that. And then working with Ivory, Ivory had different designs in the beginning too, but they ended up being a good partner that helped us to.
Hopefully you people can get some inspiration and come up with a cool name.
Well, I don't know. This is,
Can I
yeah,
ask
go
a
ahead,
couple questions? So,
Councilmember Hannan, yeah.
I'm grateful to have seen the spreadsheet with the suggested names already, and I'd like to ask you a little bit more about that. Donation was a recurring theme in your presentation. And there
Say
were
that again.
donation was a recurring theme in your presentation. Donated, things that were donated.
Yes.
There were 2 entries for park names for a Merrill Park because they said it was the gentleman Merrill who actually donated the land.
He didn't he donated a small sliver of land. If you're familiar with the park, it would have been a pie-shaped piece. It was Vic Merrill. He's the developer of the Brighton Point area. And there was that sliver of land on the south side of Brighton Point Drive that started at home plate to the fence and then all the way out to the point of the northeast corner of the park. And he donated that.
So it would be
There's no
beautiful.
question.
It's just
Him and
my
his wife.
one person's opinion here of many. I think it would be beautiful to name the park something that tells us a little about where it is, as well as what is behind the park. Brighton Point Park was something you mentioned. Could you maybe give us a little bit of your opinion about Brighton Point Park versus
Well,
Merrill Park?
The Brighton Point area now, it seems to be that area right there, along with the area west of 35th East.
Does it
that-
also connotate history as well as place?
I know there's history that relates to that. The church building was built on a farmhouse property. There was a foundation and grapevines and different things from that homestead there that was once there, right where the church sat.
What was the homestead called or referred to?
I don't know that.
Okay.
But your history guys, they can figure that out.
Councilmember Bro, I think one of the things that you mentioned is very apropos. I agree with you with the Merrill, but I was thinking maybe we could name the pavilion the Merrill Pavilion, or
Oh.
honor him in a way that, but I think that the overall park name, I think we could honor him, maybe even Merrill Corner in somewhere part of the park. I think there's a way to honor him without using the entire
There's
name.
something appropriate to that, but at the same time, that was a very small portion of the park.
Okay, I really appreciate that you put the context there. When I think of Heritage Park, I think that can apply to so many other places. And
Well,
so I'm
you could-
partial towards something that
Yeah, you
suggests
could-
where it is.
You could qualify it some way, the such and such Heritage Park or whatever.
Well, I would like to enter into this conversation. This does exist in District 4. And I want to thank Jim Peters. Thank you very much for that fascinating, as the mayor used. It was really interesting to hear. I have been quite peppered by constituents of many walks of life who have contacted me directly because of their deep sense of connection with the park, their sense of many, many families who contributed their time, energy, and resources. And so I have impassioned pleas that it be named after Summerhill and the people that chose to live there based on that park and their contributions, some of them, to the park, and others that it must be named Dover Hills because they were there and they knew from the beginning or they, have a real attachment. And so I'm going to suggest to my council colleagues that perhaps we allow others to make public comment who, like Mr. Peters, feel very passionate about this and that we don't necessarily come to a vote tonight on this park name because I think this is a real opportunity for people to come together. Some approached me that they were aware of families who chose to move away because they were so disturbed to think that their cherished park had been sold off and built largely into a tract of homes, which for many of them feel that it has not enhanced their neighborhood because the homes are extremely different in their architecture. I understand you're an architect. Do I have that right? No,
No,
it's your
no.
son. Yes,
He's
but
a landscape architect.
a landscape architect. So I would highly urge our council to allow the public to engage with this and to celebrate the history. And maybe for those who are grieving, or in some cases I told moved out of the area because they were so upset after, the sale, et cetera. So I'm,
So let me Jared, you can chime in as well. Jared was going to kind of lead this discussion. We talked about having the council narrow the number of names down and then letting the community do some type of vote or something to actually choose the name. But we have 50 to 100 names. And so we need, or more, we need to do some winnowing of these names before we go to the public. But so anyway, I like the idea, Councilmember Burrow. But anyway, Jared, anything else that you wanted to add?
No, this has kind of gone into the names. I was just going to bring that up. There's 54 names that were proposed, some multiples by some people and then some singles by others, but I like the discussion and where it's going, and I think it should have a meaning. So that's kind of where I was going, is we need to get this list whittled down before we can actually have that interaction. Because if you ask people on opinion on 55 names, we're going to have a hard time.
So what I'd love to, go ahead, Jim. Yes.
Let me just offer this. The church called it the Bicentennial Park because it was that year, but nobody called it that. It was called the Dover Hill Park, and it was simply because the Dover Hill Chapel faced Dover Hill Drive. But there was very little access to it, and from the south side off Summer Hill Drive, there was access into the parking area. And none of that makes sense now. It just doesn't. And from a communication point of view, I would think something that, like you're talking, that elicits some feeling of heritage or history or something. I don't think it ought to be named after any specific individual. There are lots of those around, and that's fine and well deserved. But this is an opportunity that's different, I think, that it'll be a focal point. It's already becoming that. And whatever signage or methods is used to tell the story there, that's a place where it could be done. So
Well, Jim, thank you. I appreciate
right,
you
thank
and Jen coming, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion
burn
still.
some incense and get
Yeah.
something going.
I love it. I love it. So I thought maybe that we could we could probably bring up the names on the screen. And then we could have each of us talk about some of the things that we've all had a chance to obviously go through them all. I have to tell you, one of the things that I absolutely loved, there were families that actually submitted, they had each member of a family submit names. The fact that they took that type of ownership and important to their family was awesome. I'm going to reach out to every single one of the people that submitted a name, because I love that they are invested and came up with some great ideas. And it's going to be an actually hard thing to even narrow it down. I've heard great comments from everybody already about what some of their thoughts. What I will just say as we get this discussion started, I think place needs to play into this at some point. One of my favorites was Wasatch Vista. I said, boy, I really like that how it sounds. It brings in the Wasatch, and the Vista, which is what we all love up there. And that's just one of my favorites. But I want to hear from everybody else what you think are important as we try to narrow this down, and some of your favorites. So start.
Yeah, for me, I just,
Yeah.
I love the fact that so many residents to throw their name in a hat and doing this. And for me, because I love competition, I would have said, let's have a contest and have a prize for the folks that come up with the right name. But since we're at this point,
We are going to give a prize to somebody. We don't know what.
okay, hopefully it's not sod. But I hope that as we go through this process, that we do consider that historical element to it to some point. But I really agree, gentlemen said about not having a singular name. I think it should be something that encompasses the community, the area, the environment, so that all folks can feel really included in the name of this park.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Rowe.
I now that I have that explanation, I agree with you, and maybe honoring some people that had a outsized contribution in in a different way would be worthwhile. I do really like thinking about having a sense of place, because a lot of these names suggest, these parks could be anywhere. And so Brighton Point Park, Summer Hill Park, Dover Hills. Dover Hills is the familiar place making name. That doesn't mean that's what it has to be, but that would be my vote, is to try to make it something that is identifiable with Cottonwood Heights and with the area it's situated in.
Well, initially, I thought a constituent who lives along the park said to me, Canyon Cove is the name of the houses that are adjacent to the park, and that should be the name. And I agreed that, it used to be that people would come to Dover Hills to go, I guess, to the Ward House. But now from Dover Hills, it is only a little walkway that comes in. And really the larger opening of the park onto a street is from, actually not even Summer Hill. It turns and it's some number, 7650. But I don't think we want to name a park 7650 Park. But my point is that I'm much more kind of convoluted about this decision based on the extreme interest and all this input that I'm getting from residents who are, again, extremely passionate about the history and their connection to that park and their choice to live there, and it's so much their identity.
Yeah, so I probably feel a little hesitant about naming it after a street that it's on. I would love to draw history. So like Jim has talked about, and I don't know if we have one specific, but Brighton Point brings a history. I mean, that's kind of what the area is. So I would probably advocate to have that be one of the options that the residents would choose. Anyway, so, but I would probably be hesitant about naming it after a street it's by or adjacent to. Other thoughts?
Well, maybe if we're trying to make a short list, what are we going for? 5, 6, 7, 8? What's our number do you think we should go for?
I think it should be 4.
The
if we
fewer
went-
the better, I think.
After that, you start getting, it just gets confusing.
Well, and and it is a city park. We all can understand that. And then I think of the different parks around Cottonwood Heights, and as Jim Peters pointed out, most of them are named after a person. Obviously, Golden Hills Park is one of the parks in my district, and I happen to live on Golden Hills Avenue. That's funny, that just occurred to me. But maybe if we're coming down to 4, if we were to include Brighton Point, I mean, maybe we should include, as Jim Peters said, for a lot of people that live there, it's always been called the Dover Hills Park. And there were a few submissions for Canyon Cove. I mean, I'm trying to take my own personal preferences out of this and try and think of what the residents, not only that live immediate to the park, but also who live in the broader Cottonwood Heights. So it makes it challenging.
So I feel like we've gotten some feedback from some residents, Councilmember Burrell, that they didn't, some pushback with Dover Hills because, Jared, do you remember the context of the people that reached out?
Yeah, so we had comments about, because they didn't want it wasn't addressed off of Dover Hill, and so people would come down Dover Hill and try to access the park from that area instead of coming off of 7650. So the actual address is on 7650, and that's why during this item, I didn't list it as the Dover Hill Park. 'Cause that's kind of what we've been referring to it as, just as for the sake of ease, but it's really not, it's not on Dover Hill. You don't access it from Dover Hill, and so there were people would come and try to park on Dover Hill.
Yeah,
That was the
I could
reason.
agree with that, but I lived in your area, and that was a chapel in the stake boundary where I lived, and regardless, it wasn't actually accessible on Dover Hill Park. That is what it is and has always been known as. So I don't feel like we should strike it unless you think there's a safety issue with that.
I think the concern was that more traffic come down Dover Hill to get to the park instead of coming up the other way, but I don't know there's a safety issue. I don't remember how many.
Well, and I think I was the one that brought that to your attention, actually, because I was getting a lot, not a lot, but I had 2 or 3 constituents who live on, it's funny because they live on Dover Hills and they were concerned, just to what was said, that people would drive, oh, I'm going to go to Dover Hills Park, I'm going to turn on Dover Hills, and then get there and decide, oh, I really meant, I wish I would have parked down near the pavilion. So then they drive back out Dover Hills because there's no direct way. So then they drive out and come back in a different way. So, but I don't know that, I think it should probably be in the last 4 and see what the public, I mean, we still have the final say, I guess, but
I like the 3 you've mentioned so far. I just don't know what the 4th should be.
Which 3?
Canyon Cove, Brighton Point, and Dover Hills.
well, what about Summerhill? I mean, that would be the access road coming off of 3500 East would be Summerhill.
What is the hesitance for Bicentennial Park?
Just so I think what Mr. Peters mentioned is that that was never called that.
Yeah,
That's just not what it was referred to.
no. It's something I think would resonate based on some of the history that was brought up.
I still like, I mean, I like Wasatch Vista as well.
Can I just chime
yeah.
in on
Please.
Bicentennial? There's a Bicentennial Park in Sandy.
Oh, well,
There were a couple names on here. I didn't have a lot of time. I would have gone through and actually searched them out, but I know like Lone Peak's another one that I wouldn't choose. And yeah.
Is that the case with Wasatch Vista?
I don't think so. I'll look real quick though. And then I did
Well-
have a question, and maybe Jim can answer it, or if anybody on the council knows, but it's Dover Hill is the name of the road, not Dover Hills. So is it the Dover Hill Chapel, not plural? Is that what it's referred to?
Did you want to come up again, Jim?
Just to,
The name of the street is Dover Hill.
what was,
That was the Dover Hill Chapel.
okay,
And so it was referred to as the Dover Hill Park.
so no S.
Yeah, but
Okay,
one comment I would make is there really is not much in the way of parking. There's no parking designed at all. And so this is designed, I'm told, as a neighborhood park, not a community park. And so and the neighborhood really is the Brighton Point area. That's, if you come from the 7-Eleven up against the bluff that goes all along there, that's Brighton Point. And so to me, that you could call it small letters, Brighton Point Historical Park or Heritage Area or something.
What, isn't it called the
Bigger.
Brighton Point Plaza? Am I?
Yeah,
remembering
Brighton
that?
Point
It is.
Plaza is the commercial area.
Well, I could I'm just speaking first. I could slam dunk that and say that's the name of the park. But I know, Councilmember Burrell, that, you'd like to have some input.
See, I don't think you're trying to draw people from the whole city to this park. It really is designed as a small park with walking paths and a pavilion and a play area. And the design is really nice. When it's all said and done, as much annoyance I've had about what's gone on with the whole thing, it will be a really nice facility. It's designed very well, and people are already embracing the idea.
Could I ask your opinion on, so some of the names, if you look at the screen, some of the names, the people have gone into great thought, Evergreen or Rocky Mountain, Summerhill, Canyons. Anyway, do you have preference on, Wasatch Vista, something like that's kind of
I-
ties the area versus, or the
I
historic?
wouldn't name it after a person. I wouldn't name it after a street.
Okay.
I would call it something that evokes a curiosity to the heritage of the area or something, some way that way. And there's no one way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, just something that has easy recall, easy to remember the name and that kind of thing.
Madison Hill looks like she used Brighton in two of her suggestions, even though it's not Brighton Point, but it might tie into the overall Brighton theme, Brighton Hill or Brighton Meadows. I like both of those options.
Yeah, Brighton, you know, Brighton goes all the way to the Brighton ski area. But that Brighton Point right there is pretty specific to that area.
Yeah.
And you could call it easily Brighton Point, such and such kind of park.
Maybe we scroll those so we all just refresh ourselves. If there's anything that jumps out to anybody that you'd like to suggest.
Are you people looking at something secret?
It's that on the screen. I thought the aster was fascinating, the flower that,
See, to me, something like that doesn't have any relevance
yeah.
to what the park is.
Well, asters normally grow wild in our foothills and
Yeah.
alpine areas. So I must say, just as Paintbrush does, which is lovely. There's many lovely names. One that caught me was the plein air, you know, the artists that, and then they evoked the artists that they could remember who would bring their easels and paint from that point or that park. So this is why I'd like to open it up for public comment on August 19th. So everyone can feel that they
Part of it.
gave their,
Yeah.
it's interesting what brings the public out. Sometimes I think, oh, this meeting, we're going to have full seats because this is a hot topic and it'll be like it is today, 3 people. And then other times there's passion about, and it's clear that this has brought out a lot of excitement and passion. And
Well, there are a lot of people who grew up in the neighborhood and played ball there, and they remember that park. They do.
yes.
In fact, one of the new residents in the new Ivory Homes, we were talking with him the other night, and he talked about all the ball games and things that
Yes.
there's a connection to a lot of people who played ball or whatever there. Well, how
Well, thank
about
you,
it?
Jim. Yeah, we'll keep discussing this. So,
So we have consensus on Brighton Point and Canyon Cove as possibilities?
Striking Dover Hill.
I don't know yet. I don't know. I wouldn't, and I mean, I really respect Mr. Peters' opinion. Having lived there for 7 years, that's what it was called. Everybody, and you're talking about a neighborhood, everybody there knows that it's Dover Hill.
Well, and I really appreciate that Mr. Peters came and advised the council. But again, having served the last 3 years, something I would do differently in the future would be to have more deeper public engagement so that all people feel heard because, you know, it's natural that the mayor and the council members know people personally within the community, but the more we can make sure that everybody feels heard and we're not being selective on who we listen to, you know, solely is very important. And
that's what this process was. That's
Yeah,
what these
so-
people that, suggested names
yeah.
involving the neighborhoods. So
Yeah,
great
so
work.
I think, in my opinion, that Dover Hill should stay on the finalist list to see whether there's some, you know, and listen, and we can still listen to the public, whether they speak tonight or we have it on the agenda for our August 19th meeting so that people can know that they, you know, this is their opportunity.
So,
I'm okay with having another public comment period rather than us deciding tonight. Is that issue?
we're not, so the purpose was not to decide tonight. It was
Okay.
to narrow it and then to find a way, whether on our website, we push out something to people to actually vote and decide, not us.
What's our timeline?
I don't think we need to create one. We'd like to do it. I mean, it opens in September. Do we have a date yet?
We don't have a solid date yet. They're still working on it. So
We're thinking
we have not
September.
accepted it yet.
So I'd love
Okay,
for it
so
to be
soon.
done before then. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Any others that jumped out to any other council members besides those that have been discussed?
I just put this up here so you could see. I think the issue is you don't, there's not a direct access along the south side of the park from Dover Hill to Summer Hill, and I think that's the confusion for people. But it's still fronts Dover Hill. There's.
I'm not saying we have to choose it. I'm just,
Yeah.
don't think we should strike it for the public comment purpose.
If we're coming up with 4 and we seem to have an interest in Brighton Point and Dover Hill, then should the other 2 be Summer Hill and Canyon Cove? I know Councilmember Highland is interested in Wasatch Vista, which is,
Just because Mayor mentioned it as a possibility. That it's right there at Wasatch Boulevard and it has a view. But that's not historical. That's new.
well, I can say that almost everyone that lives in Salt Lake Valley has a marvelous view of the Wasatch Front. I think that we talk about location real estate. It's really wonderful.
I don't have a 4th. I don't know what to tell anyone for a 4th.
Yes, Jim. Yeah, for sure.
But it's not the major path. It's a pie-shaped area on the property.
Okay. Okay.
But it was legitimate. No.
Thank you. That just wasn't as clear in the spreadsheet and the comments that were made about Merrill donation.
So I wonder if we ought to, rather than narrow R4, maybe, did you have thoughts, Jared, on how we could push this out to the community to respond? Whether it's a submission to our website, could we do, I don't know.
Yes, I mean, we pushed out this email address for people to submit to, and that's how we got these, but we could do some kind of form if we had a narrower list. I don't know. Are you asking if we can publish all 54 of them?
No, I no.
That I think would be a nightmare to try to narrow down. So I'm trying to figure out what the best way. I mean, we've got 3 here that you kind of all agree on. If there's more you want to consider, ultimately it is your decision. So
if you guys are okay with it, you could just do those. We could just do those 3 and then leave a field for someone to put a 4th option. And if there's an option that stands out that a ton of people are just putting in there that happens to rise to the top, we could reevaluate.
yeah, so we could add a fillable option.
So we're a consensus on Brighton Point and then for Summer Hill and Dover Hill.
Mm-hmm. Well, Canyon Cove, Dover Hill, and Brighton Point are the ones that I have down. If you want to add Summer Hill, we can.
Does Canyon Cove have any, how long is the history of Canyon Cove?
That's the subdivision name.
Oh, that's the,
Oh.
I don't.
Oh, I thought. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want the community to think that that's subdivision.
Sorry, I thought that was that was the area that was called. I didn't know it was just the new development name. Strike that for me. So I mean, we're still talking about like not having it be a name of a street, but Brighton Point Drive, Dover Hill Drive, Summer Hill Drive. I think in the day and age of Google Maps that, probably people are going to find this, even though it's a neighborhood park, people are going to be able to find it.
Where is Brighton Point Drive?
Just north, see, right above there's
Oh, yeah,
Dover Hill and
you're
Brighton
right.
Point Drive.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Well,
I'm not opposed to Summerhill. I guess I'm, emotionally responding a little bit to some of the comments that have been made. We don't want it to be a place, but I love it when it's a place. The church, actually, remember when the church was first ward, second ward, third ward, and they had no idea where they were. And then they, as an organization, moved towards naming their buildings according to the place where they were located, so that people had a sense of place and had a sense of community. So personally, I'm not opposed to the placemaking that the name suggests when you name it Summerhill or Doverhill or Brighton Point.
yeah. Jim, do you have a favorite?
Here, but it goes all the way around the block. So U-shaped going there. And it's this whole area that is right.
Brighton Point. Brighton Point encapsulates a bigger area than just a street that borders the park, it sounds like.
So is Summerhill on or off? I think it's just to get hung up on it. Would you like to make it a suggestion for commenting by the constituents that might be interested, or do you want to just leave it off the list?
Good question.
And that's how you get to 76, whatever it is. That's actually how you get to the park, is off of Summerhill.
If we look to have the community reach out again in some type of manner to vote or to suggest, I'm okay with Doverhill and Summerhill being options along with Brighton Point. I don't know about a fourth. I'd love for maybe something different then, because it looks like we do have three basically streets. So I'd love for one other option that's not, because maybe, the people that live around there are going to have strong opinions, and maybe they'll, what we could do more than four. It could be one, that's why I like I said, the sound of Wasatch Vista, but any of those that encapsulate the same thing I'm fine with.
Wasn't there a Cottonwood something or other as well? Cottonwood Cove, Cottonwood Gate? I can't remember. The
There
list
was-
isn't up here
There was
anymore.
a couple cottonwoods.
Is there a Cottonwood name that we might consider?
I thought that, I wasn't aware that Councilmember Holton was on with us remotely, when he just made the suggestion that if we're going to do something on the website and we need to make it a manageable number, if we made it, our top 3 or 4, and then a write-in possibility, then that would still give people a chance to say, wait a minute here, I still, there's 10 of us that vote for Crestwood, or I don't know, I'm just looking at examples here. There's wonderful names, and, I don't think maybe we need to overthink this, but I am interested in making sure that, again, we give the public all the input that they want to give us.
I'm okay with that. Just to have a fourth other option if we're going to actually do a form vote of some sort for the people who care to vote.
So we frame it, the narrative that we've narrowed it to 3 with a write-in available for, and then if the write-in gets yeah, okay.
That feels comfortable to me.
That sound good, Jared?
Yep, we'll get it. I'll work with staff tomorrow and get that put up. And then
And
which,
so
how much time
let's,
do you want to give?
let's hammer our social media, obviously.
You want to put this in the first September meeting then, instead of the 19th? Because that's like, by the time we get it up, it'll only give people like a week.
So the only thing that I'm wondering is if we're ready to dedicate in September, is that enough time to then signage and things that we want to do?
I can find out. I mean, we can always put signage up.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, that was fascinating. Thank you. So we'll move on to item C. which is listed as a CDRA project area discussion. So this is an item that I've been talking about with staff for a long time, and looks like we've got some data. So we're going to turn the time over to Jared. He's going to lead it, and give us some thoughts of what we want to do.
Thanks, Mayor. We've got two old areas that have been bringing in a little bit of money, tax increment money. They are original, I think, CDAs. Can't remember EDAs. I can't remember. The state keeps changing the acronyms. But we've got some money sitting in there. These are set to sunset in the next few years, so we actually need to spend them.
I guess I need a little bit of history. I was kind of disappointed that wasn't in the packet. When you say these are old CDAs from before Cottonwood Heights was incorporated, or what?
Yes. So these were created in the county, and they typically have a 30-year sunset.
So these are monies that were collected as part of a TIF program by the county?
Similar, yes.
And so they were passed along when we were incorporated?
Right. So
And-
they each had kind of a mission to, let me put these maps up so I can show you where they are, because this will tell you how old they are, the map they created.
I see RDA, Fort Union RDA and
Uh-huh.
Cottonwood
Let
RDA.
me,
Where are you looking?
The packet,
in
the
the
revised packet,
revised packet.
there
that we
were
sent.
maps.
So the two areas we have, and I'll have Scott go through the numbers that we've got in here, and then I'm going to have Matt Ship actually talk about some of the ideas that we have to spend the money in the areas. They've got to be spent within these areas or to help enhance these areas. So we've stretched it a little bit, and we're able to spend some monies on that beautification on 13th East. But the two areas we're talking about is the Fort Union or Union Park area here, and doesn't really match up with what's there now, but you got Fort Union here, 13th East coming down on the east, and then the creek bed over here.
But I'm not-
Those are kind of it's the office buildings that are up here on Fort Union and 13th, between 13th and Union Park, in that area. The
amount of money in that fund, Jared, is
Scott's hot here, and he didn't give me the sheet. It's 1.6 million total, and I think it's like 1.1 in this area. So the larger amount is in this Fort Union area.
Does it have to be spent there?
Has to be spent within the area to enhance the economic viability of that area. So there's a very specific goal as well. We've interpreted that to mean as well as bringing traffic in and doing some enhancements there. So we've spent some of that money on the enhancements that we were doing along 13th East from 215 into this area to help beautify that area a little bit. And then Matt will talk about some of the ideas that we have to utilize the rest of that funding. And then we have, I think it's about the remainder, I think it's about almost 400. It's not quite 400,000 in the Cottonwood Corporate Center RDA project area, which is a really odd shape you can see.
Well, I just as a clarification, I think the beautification is happening on Union Park, not 1300 East.
Sorry, Union Park, not 13th East, but it's leading into that area.
It's
So we
coming
can-
off the freeway.
Right. So it helps
Convenience.
draw into that area for that economic development of the area as a whole.
I would 100% on board with that.
One of the other items, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit too, but one of the items in our moderate income housing plan to help satisfy the requirements by the state is to actually put some funds into a housing investment fund, which is a regional investment fund, which will help go towards moderate income housing. So we would like to put some of this funding into that as well to help satisfy that, what we've said we'll do in our moderate income housing.
And the MIHP
Yeah.
report.
Now, even though that moderate housing, would we zone for it to encourage for it to occur in this area in
Not-
order to qualify?
No, not necessarily. It can qualify by being put into, they've got a regional investment fund for regional projects that it can be used for. I mean, it's something we could look at, but it qualifies by going into this regional fund.
So we made a determination that there was a certain amount that can be put, that we can be reimbursed, that we've done work on roads, and that's
Right.
that's in the Cottonwood corporate area that we haven't reimbursed yet. Is that right?
Do you have the numbers up for this yet? Okay. Sorry, I didn't have them with me, so.
The question was, so I think we had made a determination, I'd
Um,
heard a number between 300 to 400,000 of that of work that had been done on roads that we had not yet reimbursed.
Yeah, so the amount that we could still reimburse is $349,000, almost $350,000 that we
So-
have that we can still do.
And is that all from the Cottonwood corporate?
No,
fund?
there's 75,000 from the Cottonwood corporate, just a little more than that, and 273,000 from the Fort Union area. And then that would leave about 290,000 or so available from the Cottonwood corporate area and about 952,000 available from the Fort Union area once we do that transfer.
So are you making this a percentage of each could go to housing?
There wasn't a set percentage in the moderate income housing plan, so we were just going to look and see kind of what balances out and what projects we want to put money towards and what we want to put into that. So that's
Oh, I'm
kind
just
of-
trying to understand how, where we're coming up with, 273,000 out of, unless I wrote this down wrong, out of 1.1 million. I mean, what?
Yeah, so there's about a total of 1.6 million between both areas. Out of that, we went through and looked at some of the road projects and other improvement projects that we've done over the last few years that we didn't utilize these funds for, and determined that we could reimburse ourselves about 349,000
Reimburse ourselves into what fund?
into the general
General fund.
fund because we use general fund money for those projects. So we can reimburse ourselves for these projects.
Okay. Is there any reason we wouldn't? I mean, it just seems like a.
No, we didn't utilize them when we did the projects. When we went back and looked at these funds, we realized there were areas that we could reimburse ourselves for.
So there's some other options for the Fort Union, or the Union Park area rather. There's a road project that would be beneficial,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, so I'll let Matt go through kind of what we're proposing to utilize the funds
Okay.
for, the remaining funds, and then if do you have anything you want to share? Do you want me to stop sharing, or are you good?
Oh, no, this is fine.
Okay.
It's,
I can
So-
pull it up on Google too if you want.
yeah, I have Google up here. I can share my screen.
Scott, while he's pulling that up, was this 349,000 in the budget or not in the budget? So this would be. something
It's not
we would move.
budgeted right now because we just got it all kind of straightened out and figured out over the last month. And so we would need to do a budget adjustment. We'll do that probably in September. We'll do a budget adjustment, transfer the money back to the general fund, and then hopefully settle on the projects that we want to do to spend the remaining amount, and then budget those so that we can and probably transfer the money from the CDRA fund to the capital projects fund to actually complete those projects.
Okay, so on what some thoughts were on utilizing those funds. One, if you'll recall, the council directed us to work on the medians and beautification of the city coming off 215 all the way through to Creek Road on Union Park. Part of the RDA, the area of the RDA is this little triangle area, if you will, right here. So when we say up to 13th, this is 1300 right here. So one of the funds some of the funds we're using right now actually to create the beautification in here. If you go out there, you'll see a lot of work going on through these medians right in here. Those are being done right now. One of the other options that we have thought about is Union Park on our side. If you'll remember, about 3 years ago, Midvale redid their side of the road. We did not do a joint project with them at that time. So our portion of the road from 215, well, all the way through could use a mill and overlay and a reconstruction in some locations. Up to 1300, which is the limit, I believe, is the termination limit of the RDA. So we would take it up to there in that location. So we're estimating, we have talked with our contractor that's actually working down the street here on another project. And we talked to them about honoring their unit price and their bids, and they've said they would do that. And so anyway, they gave us a rough quote of about 875 to reconstruct our side, reconstruct the east side of Union Park from 215 to 1300. And like I said, and then the other thing that's going on there is that beautification of the street. One of the other, I don't know if we want to get into some of the, but those,
That would
I
leave
guess that
about
expends the funds.
100,000 for,
That would expend the funds that would be remaining, if you will.
Out of this fund, and then we have additional funds from the.
Oh, and then
from
the other
other
one,
area.
well, another area, I'll go over to the other RDA or CDA, I'm not sure. If you'll recall down here, we actually got some, we're over here on 30th East. This is the shop, Public Works shop is right here. North is above us, up. And so this is the intersection at the shop. And here's the trail. The Big Cottonwood Trail comes across here. So this is Big Cottonwood Trail. There's the pond. So getting you located. One of the other options we looked at was, as this is a very busy trail crossing, doing a very enhanced trail crossing here, if you will, for pedestrian safety as they cross from one side of the trail to the other, and also looking at enhancing pedestrian safety along this intersection, if you will, right here with an enhanced crosswalk to help. We get a lot of, if you, we sit there and see it all day long at the shop, we get a lot of people darting across the street back and forth, some coming from these hotels over here to these corporate areas and back and forth, and then also corporate coming over here to the restaurants. So one of the things we've thought about is enhancing, and I don't have any specifics or any details right now, but the enhancements are anywhere from 50 to 75 per crossing on that. So rough numbers, I don't have anything detailed. I don't have any specifics. I don't have any design. We're taking a really kind of a swag at this to get an idea to help you as you make some decisions and direction you want to go.
As we begin to consider this, just jumping back to your first recommendation, when I think about that commercial corridor, traveling northbound toward the intersection at Fort Union Boulevard toward the freeway, I don't think of that as particularly ugly or needing enhancement compared to the many problematic areas we have within the city. But I wasn't going to bring that up because I thought this had to be tied to some, highly commercial area. But if we're talking about 3000 East and improving the safety for those who are trying to cross 3000 East, then that, to me, seems to fall in the category of general improvement and active transportation more so than economic development. Now, there's an argument to be had that the more you get people out of their cars and feeling comfortable walking and rolling, local businesses are patronized. So I'm not trying to exclude. I'm delighted that our Public Works Director has brought forward his observations there. I have to go on record as saying this ties back to what I know Councilmember Highland and I say consistently into the microphone, that we need to prioritize where the places are in the city and why we want to do improvements, because it seems a little bit arbitrary to me to get these two suggestions. I think, we have to start somewhere, but I would like to see the council, come to the point where we decide what makes things a priority. I mean, how can beautification in a place that already is palatable, we spend over $800,000 on when we don't come up with the 30,000 and 70,000 in other places throughout the city that need both safety and beautification.
the monies we're talking about can't be used in other places.
Well,
They
he
have
just
to
said
be
that they
used-
could be used along
No, no,
3000 East.
No, that's a
CDA
separate
there.
CDRA.
Two CDAs.
Yeah.
There's one at Cottonwood Corporate and there's one at Union Heights.
Let me share these again, and I'll show you I'm gonna
There
pick
isn't,
Matt out.
And can I ask a couple questions related, because I understand the difference here. Still, the median is still being split with Midvale, right? the cost?
Correct. We're working with them on that.
And what's the life expectancy on the road that you described, the east side of Union Park? Right now, what's the life expectancy?
Let me, here's-
It needs reconstruction. We're at that point.
that's,
Okay.
this is what it looks like right now. And you can tell our side versus Midvale's.
Well,
And this is from July of 2025. So Google just went through there.
Your speaker
Yeah, if you
down
look,
from
if you
the-
look
that doesn't
down the
reflect
road.
very well on us, does it?
Okay, so you're saying that this money would be spent not on beautification of the sidewalks and medians, but of the actual roadway? Is that what we're talking about?
In this
We're
area.
crossing two things up. One, the medians that are on Union Park were dilapidated, dying, and they, quite frankly, look terrible. We were directed by the council to go in and beautify those. We're using funds from this particular RDA to beautify those medians. We're bringing them back to life so that it doesn't look like trash when you drive into the city. The other thing we've mentioned here is repair of the existing road, our side of the road, the east side of Union Park from 215 to 1300 East. And the reason we're stopping at 1300 because that's the extent of the RDA. So that is the road. It's not beautifying the road, it's fixing the road that is in very bad condition, as you can see from the pictures. The other one I mentioned, the crosswalk has to be spent in that RDA. And we don't have many projects in there that meet those requirements. But one of the things that we thought about, and we thought trying to live up to the directive of the council members of safety for pedestrians, we would enhance the crosswalk at the trail. And if we have any remaining funds, we could stretch that further north to the other intersection where we get a lot of crossings of pedestrians going to the restaurants and the hotels and back and forth. So,
For me, those crosswalks are really critical because I do see the people dashing across that road and sometimes it's busy and the vehicles are moving very fast.
there were about 5 of them the other day dragging their suitcases across going
Yeah.
to the corporate center.
So are you
from the
thinking
hotel.
raised crosswalks, Matt? I mean, tell me, I know you said you haven't done any.
We haven't done anything. We've looked at rough ideas of bump outs, narrowing the lanes, enhancing the visibility, just kind of adding and maybe a safety island in the middle, that sort of thing.
Okay.
A raised crosswalk at an intersection of that volume is probably not the best idea, but nothing's off the table for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to see the most restrictive crosswalk we could do, or the safest one. Just to first slow down some of those people. coming
Yeah,
off
they
the
just
freeway.
whip off the freeway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Can I insert here that you didn't see the speaker comment card that came in before the council meeting that Tiffany sent to us? It's very brief, so I'll read it. I'd like to propose a city ordinance that requires homeowners to have intentional landscaping throughout their property. This proposal ordinance would not require lawn, but something other than dirt and weeds for the benefit of surrounding property values. What he's saying is something that I have been concerned about in that we are seeing more blight in our city. And while we can't, we're not going to impose landscaping restrictions on private property, I do think blight creates blight and beauty creates beauty. And so I wholeheartedly support some of these efforts to beautify and raise the standard of what we see in our city. Of course, not breaking the bank, but I do really appreciate what's been done on Union Park because that reflects so much about us.
Can I interject on that a little bit? I agree with you. I think it's sometimes disheartening to see the way that some of the lawns are maintained, but we are not all in the same economic situation. We can afford water. Some people are just trying to survive. It's difficult, especially when you're looking at property rights and individual situations, to be able to mandate anything.
I am not suggesting anything on private property. I'm suggesting that we as a city in our public areas
On the public
invest
areas,
in
okay.
creating beautiful spaces that encourage
And I know we're
beautiful
doing,
spaces.
I know we're doing that right now in some areas, so
Yeah, and I wouldn't, we do have ordinances and other cities have ordinances where you can't have weeds above a certain height because then it's a safety hazard, but it doesn't mean that you have to have a green lawn.
Well-
And so I'm not suggesting from this comment card that we do anything like that, but I am suggesting that we as a city look at our areas that we can influence and suggest that we spend a little bit of money there.
Well, and I think that, constituents are very concerned about the Great Salt Lake, and they are trying to conserve water. And it's something I have brought up over the last couple years, people that are aware of the fact that, yes, it's one thing to let the grass die off, and while that's ugly to look at and it can create fire hazard, they're not watering their trees. So now we have dead trees. So there needs to be, I see it as a citizen committee on sustainability, and they can work with the community and in a instructive way. And I agree that the city can lead on this, the kind of things that we landscape, and there's so much possibility. So I know we're not here to talk about all these related issues, but I'm feeling clearer now on where we're taking these funds, and I would agree that if that roadway needs to be improved anyway, to be able to use these funds toward improving the roadway, which we know is incredibly expensive, is a good idea.
So I think, Matt, you've got a consensus to that side of the road needs to be constructed anyway. Let's do it.
Okay, we'll push forward and we'll bring something back to you.
Okay. And then we'll be interested to see the crosswalk designs.
So would you like to go forward with the crosswalk locations?
I just want to say thank you for considering the council priorities, and I know that's what you're supposed to do, but you don't have to. And so thank you for meeting, like checking so many boxes: beautification, safety, and maintenance.
Well, and I would just say on that, because I ride my bicycle through that very place that Matt Ship, and I also go to Foothill Clinic, so I go through the other intersection to the north as well off of 3000. And I think that we need to be thinking about probably medians, because putting in crosswalks, we know that's where our pedestrians are being struck, is in crosswalks. So it likely needs to include medians that provide a safe island in a wide street like 3000 East, especially where people are coming off the freeway and are accustomed to driving as coming off the freeway. They've been driving 80, 90 miles an hour.
So Matt, did we determine if there is some monies left over after the crosswalk in that fund? Because there's some portions of the Big Cottonwood Trail that need to be repaired with, would there be monies available for that?
I'm not sure. We'd have to, I'd defer to the two geniuses over there on the money. I'll let Scott do that. But what I believe we tried to do some reimbursement on some of the trail we worked on. I think that's part of the reimbursement to ourselves on some of the trail we worked on. But that's as far as it goes. We can't stretch it beyond, let's say, the public works yard, if you will.
We can't go east
Yeah, it's
of
not any
30
further
feet.
than what we have.
So any repair to the
Any
trail would
repair
have
at
to
this
be on the
point,
west side of the
we're
road.
gonna be bringing back to you some repairs for the trails coming up. So,
Okay.
and I think on
Good.
the east where on the west, the west side of the west portion of the trail where we rebuilt it, I think we've reimbursed, I think part of this might be reimbursing ourselves for that work already.
Yeah. Okay. And we can't go across the street, even though that it's the same trail? Did we made that determination already?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we.
If
and
we can
have-
do that, I'll take Union Park to Creek Road.
Yeah, and we do have some funds in.
I
here
like
for
creativity,
reimbursement
Matt.
for the
Yeah,
Scotland
there you
Trail.
go. Okay. Well, good. I think that was a really positive discussion.
Okay.
Any other comments?
No, we'll get this. We have a budget amendment that we're probably bringing in September that we'll try to add this to as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Great. So the next item is item D under reports, item 3, which is the La Cresta Drive discussion. So we're gonna have Matt or Jared. Do you want to start before we turn over to Matt, or
Jared, can you let me on the screen?
Oh, yeah. Can you not kick me out?
Well, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to start it right there.
Okay.
I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Then we'll get it to Matt. Perfect.
Not sure. It should be coming up. Okay. So as with a lot of roads in the city, we have a myriad of issues, and we've heard that a little bit tonight when we've talked about doing the general overall idea for safety in the city, all of these things. We have trying to come up with a solution as a whole as opposed to, doing spots all over the place. But one of the things that we've been asked to look at as staff, and this is by residents, we've had residents coming in on Greenfield, and one of the issues on Greenfield that we're running into quite a bit is a lot of cut-through traffic. We've looked at,
Yes, I don't know where
oh, I'm
Greenfield
sorry,
is.
Greenfield right here, my bad. And here's La Cresta. La Cresta here, here's Highland. So this is the Highland, La Cresta intersections. I got words over everything, I'm sorry. So there's the Highland, La Cresta. This is La Cresta and the corner and intersection of Greenfield and La Cresta. And right out here, which is not shown on your screen, is Fort Union. So north is up. Yep. The liquor store, correct. Correct. Okay. So one of the things that we have, we've run speed studies on this road. We've done quite a few things and looked at it. The speeds aren't the worst in the city. We've had
Average speed on that road.
I'd have
7
to
or
pull it up.
28?
28 is the average, as the 85th is about 28. So we've run that, but one thing we are finding is we're finding a lot of the volume is high on the traffic. Now, when we look at this, I'll kind of run through this with you if I can. So we've been asked to look at some possible solutions, and I know the council has looked at this before. Prior to this council, probably 2 councils ago, there was a discussion of actually closing Greenfield down here by the I'm going to say the liquor store to help orient, but down at that intersection behind the liquor store, closing Greenfield. That idea was quickly shut down by the council. Residents came in and were asking about that, but that was closed down. So one of the things that we keep hearing from these residents are, for sure, a lot of cut through. People wanting to bypass Highland and Fort Union. If the light's there, they'll cut through and take La Cresta and try to jump out there. To me, I don't know. Sometimes it does not make sense to bypass a light to go to a light. I'm not sure how that works, but I think in traffic and people driving in their minds, as long as your car is moving, you're making progress. That's really what it boils down to. Even if you're driving 25 miles an hour through a neighborhood, you're still making progress, is the point. So we've looked at this. Now, a couple of things happening just to bring you up to speed again. You'll recall we received the grant for the west side. We call it Highland Trail Phase 3, which goes from roughly 215 all the way to Fort Union. And we've received that grant, and we're in the process of doing that design right now. At that intersection of Highland and La Cresta, part of the design is taking into account that intersection, and we're looking at some options on how to really discourage cut-through traffic to avoid people wanting to go through the neighborhood or turn off a Highland and try to cut the light and work their way westbound. So those are some things, and probably here I would say maybe not the next council, but in the following, we're going to bring to you a couple of 30% designs for you to review, and we talk about and have you debate, and we'll choose an option, and then we'll move forward with that. What we're waiting on right now is we are collecting data as well for all of La Cresta and all of Greenfield right now as part of this study, where we're getting traffic movement. We're gonna finally narrow down where all this traffic's coming from, as opposed to being anecdotal, where I actually stood out there with former council member Peterson and former council member Scott Bracken. And we were on a radio saying there's a green car coming, there's this car coming, and it was kind of interesting. It's the strangest traffic study I've ever done. But Doug, to his credit, Doug, as always was Doug, made it very entertaining. So anyway, that's a side note. We're going to finally get those numbers. Now, to bring you up to speed, One of the things we are looking at doing, we have to come through here next round of road maintenance. This neighborhood is slated for a slurry seal or a surfacing. One of the options we're looking at is restriping Greenfield. And one of the ways to try to improve some safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. Right now, Greenfield has a bike lane, a dedicated bike lane on both sides of the road where the shoulders are narrow. Now, you are allowed to park on the shoulder because it's a dedicated bike lane, but it's outside of the shoulder. So it's there. One of the things we've looked at doing, since this is a neighborhood, is taking this and increasing the shoulder width so that there's more room for pedestrians because there's no sidewalk in here either. So it increases, we've got a lot of asphalt that we can increase the shoulder width, allowing pedestrians and bicyclists to use the shoulders more effectively, even when cars are parked, and then making the road itself a Sharrow bike lane for Greenfield. So there's an option. So we would restripe that and narrow the lanes down. Another option we've looked at as we talk about it is a traffic circle, not a roundabout, but a traffic circle. I've put on here a pilot program to come in here. This is a three-way stop right here. And if you go out there on a three-way stop, you'll find out that only one person will really stop at that because it does not warrant a stop sign. The through road on Greenfield should actually be a through road. I stood out there the other day and out of the 15 or so cars that went through there, I would guess maybe 4 or 5 came to a pause and went through. So it's very interesting. And then when speaking with the neighbors out there, they also will tell you the same thing. It makes no sense. People don't stop. And the reason that's important is because if you are a pedestrian, you see a stop sign, you expect people are going to stop, or you hope they will. And a driver, if you don't expect a stop sign or it makes no sense to be there, you don't stop. And so you create a conflict. So one of the things we're looking at possibly is doing a pilot program in here at this intersection with that. So to sum it up, give you an idea, I took some numbers over the last 36 days. I pulled from July 1st to now. On Greenfield, on the southbound, we have about 26,000 cars in that time, which equates to about 730 vehicles per day. Now, it doesn't seem like a huge amount. It really isn't for a neighborhood until you look at the numbers closely. That's all packed in from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. It is really bunched in there, the higher numbers. And each one of these, that's the same thing. So northbound, you have 34,000 vehicles per day, roughly 1,000 cars, 34,000 over the time, roughly 1,000 cars a day going northbound. There is some cut-through traffic happening. Just the difference between those two is about 1,000 or so. So you have more than 1,000. Boy, look at that. Duval County math coming through again. You have quite a few cars. On La Cresta, now we have a glitch, I believe, in one of our systems because the eastbound on La Cresta says it's only getting 5,000 vehicles a day, which doesn't make sense if you're having that cut-through traffic. But on the westbound, you are actually getting about 23,000 vehicles a day cutting through La Cresta. So there is cut-through traffic. There is an issue. The idea is how are we going to slow it down? Not slow it down, but how are we going to take care of that? We believe this intersection redesign will take care of a lot of that problem. In the interim, we're looking at some of these other things to improve the pedestrian and bicycle safety along here by working that intersection, making it so it is very visible, and then widening the shoulders. And in a nutshell, that's some of the things we're working on over in that area right now.
Just to clarify, funding is available for the study right now. We don't have.
We
construction.
are already funded and we've already signed the agreement. The council has, yes.
For the study only, though. We don't.
The study only. Oh, yeah. The study only takes us once again to the 30% design, which gives us the environmental and all of those things. And then once we get that 30% finalized, that's when we go to the next, if the council approves, we go to the next round of federal funding and see if we can get funds for that, and we make the application. So right now, there is no funding for any type of construction on the intersection that we're talking about.
You had a traffic circle
Right here?
pilot at the road at halfway through, yeah.
right here.
What road
Yeah.
is that?
That is another one. Now, one of the rough ideas that we're looking at here at this intersection actually involves a traffic circle right here.
What is the cross street there?
Yeah, what,
I-
that's what I was asking, the cross street.
It's a real small street. One of the things, you know, when you look at your numbers there,
Sorry,
It's
Greendale?
Greendale and La Cresta. Yeah.
Greendale and Cresta.
The other one that I didn't see that's on your map is the one, the street coming off of just past the liquor store on Greenfield.
This
Right-
one?
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Is that in the study as well?
That's in the traffic count. So we'll, once again, we hope, we hope to get a good idea of exactly where the cars are coming from. And in order to do that and something of that nature, you actually have to stand on every intersection and count the cars physically at the same timing, so you can then plug it in the model and it'll tell you when and where the cars are rolling in and out.
a couple of years ago, we had the discussion about this, and one of the issues is the learned behavior from the businesses that are there that are feeding into La Cresta off of the frontage road.
Mm-hmm.
And as patients and employees start to learn that that cut through is there, that's where I think a lot of that larger number is coming from. Because you see quite a bit of that during that rush hour period. Is if the cars are stacked up going onto Highland, even if it's only 3 or 4 deep, I see those people taking that.
Yeah,
right
they
hand
will
turn.
cut around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of that, like I said, part of that does take into account giving the businesses the same access they have, but pushing them to Highland as opposed to pushing them through the neighborhood. Yes, ma'am. Here? Did you say that? Oh, look. Oh, you want me to go? Sorry.
Great.
So what direction are you asking for from this discussion, or is it just
think
an
this is just
information?
informative.
More of an
Okay.
informational. We will, like I said, the striping we'll take care of when we resurface. That's not this year. But it's something we will do. I think it's a good idea, especially given the new state law on parking and bike lanes. Opening a door into a bike lane is a no-no. So it gives the ability to put the bike lane in a neighborhood at the same time, give a lot more space for pedestrians and bicyclists or those who are, using other modes of transportation, a little safer to walk. And we'll look at a pilot similar to what we tried down the road and see how that works out. But the council needs to understand that we need to start taking a very hard look at these stop signs that are not where they should be. We did one over east of this where we took out 3 or 4 stop signs that should not have been there. Little bit of an outcry at this point. It's working like a charm and no one has an issue with it. No one's being made into a traffic criminal, if you will. For the record, I went out there after I stood out there and walked that, I ran that stop sign twice, not even thinking about it. It just,
Chief,
and
leading
I
on that.
stood there and knew about it.
Hey,
I
Matt,
won't-
if we do the traffic circles, are you planning to remove those stop signs?
Yes, yeah, they would come out if the,
Yeah, the
Okay.
traffic
Which
circles,
makes sense. Yeah.
they're gonna basically work as a traffic calming.
yeah, they would
devices.
work as a traffic calming. It would slow the cars. You can't cut the corners,
Yeah.
so you have to take your time. And
I
yes,
would love for you to include, I know you said you're gonna do traffic counts, but a traffic circle entering Greenfield just past the liquor store, to me, would get them started into Greenfield, understanding that they've got to slow. Yeah,
right here,
yes.
we'll take a look at it.
I'm looking for the pilot program because the stupidest stop sign in my district is at Oak Creek Circle and Oak Creek Drive. There's a 3-way stop. I know, Chief Russo, that there's a lot of traffic officers that pull over the Brighton kids that don't come to a complete stop. That is the dumbest place. So please include that in your consideration if this is what you're going after. Maybe a traffic circle or something to slow traffic other than the stop signs that don't make any sense there.
Yes.
Mayor, if I can, I know I haven't spoken, that we talked about it a little bit in the past, but the SS4A, that's been on a lot of people's minds and it's been brought up here tonight as well. Finally, the feds are finally talking. We finalized the agreement on that. They have it now for their signature. They like it. So they should be getting it back to us here in about a month. And once we have it, we'll be bringing it to council and the funds are available at that point. So we can start pushing forward and you'll be seeing a contract coming forward for the citywide safety program
Great.
that's been mentioned here.
That's really great news.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, Matt. Item E under reports is now a short-term rental discussion. We've had a few of these, and so we asked some specifics of Councilmember Highland, and she's done a bunch of work, so we're going to turn the time directly to her.
Thank you. I wish this were just a slam dunk decision. It's just gets more complicated the deeper I dive into this. I did participate in a 4-hour short-term rental training that was with Julie Davies, who this was a training that is offered for people who want to get licensed as short-term rental operators in a city. Many cities require this training, and I want to thank Councilmember Burrell, who listened to about half of that as she could during the day. And then also, please, Chief Russo, pass on our thanks to Lieutenant Ricks, who listened through the whole thing. And it was very enlightening to just hear all the different terms and how the platforms are trying to get around all of the municipal code that we're trying to put in place. I mean, it was a little bit discouraging because even if we do put some things in place, they're going to try to get around it no matter what. Today, you asked me to come back to you with an owner-occupied definitions that we might consider, and a couple of things I'd like to maybe accomplish. Do we have 20 minutes? What do we have? 20 minutes? To get some direction from the council. Remember that the short-term rental committee is willing to fill in all the details. They just need some direction, and I don't think we know our direction yet. Data is important. Now that we have flash vote in the mix, we should consider a short-term rental survey fairly soon. And then maybe rely on the Granicus dashboard. I'm going to kind of put a pin in that for a minute because we talked about what that could provide for us. And then maybe a decision today about whether or not we're going to go forward with purchasing the Granicus dashboard. So the last discussion, we had proposed a couple of things. One is that we would adopt a budget amendment to purchase and implement the Granicus host compliance software. And if we did that, we would do that with the purpose of bringing the existing non-licensed short-term rentals that are allowed in our city into compliance as the first step. And the second would be possibly to eliminate the whole home existing short-term rentals in single-family residential zones. And last, that we would use that software dashboard to inform the short-term rental committee and the council on where the owner-occupied listings are, then that might guide our policy. So let me share my screen. presentation mode.
Just while you're, oh,
Please.
well, I was only going to say that I actually stayed to the last 30 minutes of her presentation. So
note
I
that.
was,
Sorry.
I was listening to almost the whole thing. And, you know, one of the things that did come out was that actually the most compliant short-term rental users are the ones that rent their whole home versus owner occupied.
And that's going to be part of our discussion today, because the other thing that came out of my research here is that if we're talking about affordable housing, if we're only going to consider owner occupied, we are taking away probably the most affordable housing in our city, which is internal ADUs. So again, put a pin in that, but thank you for bringing that up. So I think this is in June when we discussed that we wanted to incentivize compliance and target enforcement and create a scalable policy, and then do our best to enforce owner occupancy. So let me go forward a couple of slides here and give you an idea of what owner occupancy looks like in some of the surrounding areas. So in Washington County, which is down in the St. George area, owner-occupied short-term rentals are allowed in unincorporated county areas. And the way they determine owner occupancy is that the primary residential exemption is claimed for that parcel or lot. And if you're not familiar with that, I mean, that's something you declare so that you get that 45% residential exemption on your property tax. So they decided that that was good enough for them to say that that's the primary residence that would be owner occupied. And then that when that person exits, or when that residential exemption is lost, then the short-term rental license becomes terminated. Now in Sandy, they require that the fee title owner may be an individual or a trustee that has at least 50% or more ownership on the proposed STR, and they do not allow an owner to be a corporation, a partnership, an LLC, or a similar entity. I'm going to tell you that I'm not sure that the LLC is a great restriction because of insurance purposes. For example, most people who actually own properties will create an LLC for some liability protection. So we could still consider that a limited liability company as long as the member on the LLC shows that they are the primary resident of that property. I would say that the fee title, the family trust, or an LLC might be something to consider. But we can eliminate corporations or partnerships from owning these properties. They also say the owner has to be there for a minimum of 183 days. And what that corresponds to is then that's the residency requirement by state statute, that if you live here more than 183 days a year, you are considered a full-time resident of the state. To show owner occupancy, besides showing the fee title that you actually own the property, you have to show your tax returns. And the reason you have to show your tax returns is that you should then show that you have filed your taxes in the state of Utah. And that would reflect that you are a resident of Utah, as well as a government ID and an affidavit. Some other things about Sandy is that they only allow one rental per parcel, and that's pretty common across many of the municipalities that we've investigated. They only allow 8 people. That's kind of an oddity and probably really hard to enforce, although there might be some enforcement mechanisms. They require a minimum of 1 night. Some municipalities prefer that be a minimum of 2 nights so that you don't actually have so much transient coming in. And the maximum of 29 nights reflects the fact that Utah, once it's 30 days or over, that would be considered a tenant and not a guest. And the rights of a guest versus a tenant is a whole nother thing that we could discuss, and we probably don't have time today. But the eviction process for a tenant is very different than a guest. You think of a guest as a hotel. If they create a disturbance, they are immediately terminated from being able to occupy that hotel. And that would be the same thing with short-term rentals. Then the other couple other things Sandy does is they only allow a whole home rental limited to 180 nights per year. I've been told by the compliance software companies that you can do that, but it's really difficult. And then ADU rental is allowed up to 365 nights per year because, again, you're thinking that the owner's there, so they should be able to rent their property or their internal ADU or their external ADU for the full year. The other one that I found with owner occupancy is Murray, and they prohibit vacation rentals or unhosted sharing within the city. According to Julie Davies, and Julie Davies has been in the hospitality industry since the 1980s. She's considered a short-term rental expert. She has created a curricula for short-term rentals that is used in 22 universities. So I don't think she's the only voice to listen to, but I do consider her an expert. And she said that hosted sharing is a major, major liability to think about for a city. Because if what you're essentially saying is that you allow a short-term roommate. And there was a case in Nevada where a short-term roommate went into the owner's bedroom, raped her. One of the other bedroom occupants went into her bedroom to stop the rape. And there was a lawsuit that ensued, and the person who helped stop the rape was actually the one who was left holding the bag and that liability. But then the city also had some liability because they condoned that hosted sharing. So I am not in any way suggesting that we should consider hosted sharing, but I do want to share with you their definitions. An owner is any person who, alone or with others, has legal or equitable title to the dwelling unit. Owner occupancy means that they shall reside in the dwelling as their primary residence. And then they also have another definition about lives on site. And that's the bottom bullet there. They basically say if you're living on site, in their definition, it says you're conducting activities like meal planning and errand running, and you are a natural person in the dwelling unit in which they're the owner and you use that dwelling as a primary residence. So they have a further definition of owner occupancy versus, and living on site in their requirements. They also require the 50% ownership, no corporations, and the government ID and affidavits. So one of the things I think we've been struggling with, and of course, as a council, is we don't really know where the short-term rental demand is, and therefore we don't really know what our policy should be. I want to acknowledge that our city staff, the city manager, and the code enforcement has kind of raised the cautionary flag and said, you really want us to go after these 500 or 600 that are in the city, and how are we going to do that with our limited resources? And we really don't even know what kind of race we're running yet until we know where the short-term rentals are. And to Councilmember Burrell's point, does owner occupied help us meet our council objectives? And I didn't really think about this so much as when I was talking to a constituent and also to Julie Davies about how many or how desirable it is when there's just mountains of apartments in this valley for someone to be able to rent a basement, have a yard, access to a yard, feel like they're in a neighborhood, and that those are probably the most desirable long-term alternatives to a big apartment complex that we have in our cities and in the county. And so go ahead, please.
I need to interject that I know council members in other cities especially in Salt Lake City, and they're not finding that ADUs are an appreciable dent in the affordable housing inventory. So I don't, we can incentivize all we want, but if the reality is that empty nesters and people who have lived in their homes for a long time, the probability of them wanting to turn part of their, their basement or create an external ADU, I don't think this is the kind of volume that is going to help us out of our affordable housing dilemma. And I still stand with the people that say it's one thing to do some short-term rentals during ski season, but it's a whole nother proposition to have the noise transfer and the loss of privacy that comes from renting long-term one's basement.
I appreciate that perspective too. I don't think we actually know the influence right now of ADUs because they're not licensed and traceable. And as I've mentioned before, there are so many who don't even file it on their tax returns because the burden of the federal tax policy to actually report your income on an ADU is prohibitive. So I don't know about that. And I think that's one of the things we're wrestling with is just where do we want to
Well, I
incentivize
think
these?
we should ask staff to check with Salt Lake City. If they've done some kind of studies that we can draw from, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah,
that something we could-
I would disagree with the narrative. The biggest thing that can affect affordability is supply. ADUs creates supply for people to live. So, cities can only do so much, but without supply. So ADUs literally is adding supply. So to say that that hasn't affected affordability, doesn't jive with me. I think Councilmember Highland's right in the fact that probably very few are being reported, being able to track that. But anyway.
And I think our decision is, and I am leading you towards a discussion. I've just got a couple more slides. But this is the map that we showed at the town hall. This is a map provided by Granicus in their presentation. And I know that we're trying, and please, by the way, if you would go back and look at your email and take the poll about when we can do a Granicus demo for the council, this will help. But I've actually made it so you can see this a little bit bigger in the next slide. So this is their map of where short-term rentals are right now. And one of the things that we were struggling with in particular is, okay, well, what kind of policy do we make from this? And it would still be my recommendation that we do a budget amendment, put the compliance software in place, go after licensing those that can be licensed, and then use the address verification module that the state has paid for that is going to come with the software. Because right now, what this says is this is their best guess. And when we implement the software and we have the address verification module, we will have a dashboard that will be more accurate about where these actually are. And I know it's up to us to decide where we want them, but I do think the data will help guide our decisions because, as I said, I don't even think we know what race we're running yet. With the dashboard, the representative from Granicus said that we would be able to tell the difference between owner occupied and whole home rentals. That they would be able to tell us that. I don't even know how many are actually in ADUs or are offered as a partial rental. Before we argue about, owner occupied definition and where they should or shouldn't be, I want to know what the council thinks about proceeding like that.
So one of my concerns would be the owner occupancy was what I understood created the fewer nuisance violations or
Not
No,
according.
that's not the case.
And that's not the case in Sandy. That's not the case according to Julie Davies, who has looked at.
That's what we were told at the beginning of this process, that owner occupancy, because somebody was on property, it was their home, that they were much more concerned about making sure that they weren't parties, that there were all of the things, the nuisances that came. I mean, literally, that's the narrative that we were given about owner occupancy. It's why we went down.
That was my
road.
assumption. I think that was all of our assumptions. That just makes sense that if there's an owner on premise, that you would have eyes on ears on the ground.
During the 3-hour session on Saturday, what Ms. Davies described was that in cities that have, that have gone about this in a really sophisticated way, and Las Vegas is one of them, they find that those who rent their whole home and use a professional manager, and they also get the licensing, that they do a more professional job than an owner who's renting out just a room. And therein lies, I think, our challenge is the difference between renting out something that can be closed off, such as a basement apartment, versus renting houses also, within your house. But in either case, the closed off is better, but the least nuisance problems came from the units that were whole homes and were being professionally managed. And is that how you understood it,
Yeah, and
Councilmember Highland.
I want to be really clear. I am not advocating right now for us to decide where whole home rentals would be allowed or whether owner occupied rentals would be allowed. I just flat out don't know yet because we don't know we're guessing where they are. We could do this with an overlay zone where you allow them only in certain areas. You could do it in a limited way. We had mentioned before with a little bit of pushback that maybe we only allow whole home on our arterials because that's where parking can be mitigated. That's where we don't actually have neighborhoods. I'm the only thing I know to do right now is to bring into compliance what we can, look at where the demand is, and then we as a council get to decide what to do about that demand and where we're going to restrict or not restrict
Well,
and how.
one of the things that she did bring out that Las Vegas has done is they limit only 10% of the multifamily housing in Las Vegas can be short-term rentals because they don't want to lose the kind of rentals and ownership product that is affordable. So I thought that was for me kind of a profound takeaway from that session. Again, an ordinance in Las Vegas to limit to 10%, whereas we've done kind of the exact opposite. We have only allowed for short-term rentals in condominium complexes. So that's something we need to really look at. Maybe we talk to we get some kind of data from Las Vegas. Let's look at other places who are dealing with a big influx of visitors coming in.
A question that sorry.
Oh, please go
Question,
ahead.
yeah, question that I have is just helping me understand what the ultimate goal is here. When we talk about, I was actually in City Hall a couple weeks ago, and I believe it was Maverick that got a phone call from somebody that was looking to buy a home and said, "Hey, is this allowed as a short-term rental?" And of course, the city can't guarantee anything because there's a lot of steps and you've got to get licensed and other things. They said, "Well, I need to know before I buy this home because we're not planning on living there. This is purely just for investment property." And and Councilmember Highland, I think you've kind of answered it. We're not really sure what the answer is, and from my perspective, it's disheartening to me, and I totally get it. I love that we're a destination where people are excited and want to invest. That's awesome. But I really, really, really want this to be a place where people are going to live, especially when we're dealing with issues with schools closing and kids and affordability and supply. And frankly, even neighborhoods who, as I've talked to a lot of homeowners, they said, look, I think the fact that our areas haven't been zoned for short-term rentals and they're allowed to say that we're going to now allow this activity, even though it's never been a legal activity, is not something I'm super interested in. And again, I don't think we have the answers, but I think I want feel a little more comfortable of the path that I'm walking down before I get too far down the road, if that makes sense. And I don't know if there's answers you can give me to help maybe clarify some things or feel more comfortable. But I know we've talked about it for a while. I'm still a little lost or confused of where we're heading down this road.
I want to mirror some of what Councilmember Holton just stated. And on top of that, I'm still really concerned about the enforcement of this. I'm concerned about the cost. We're comparing ourselves to cities that have much greater capacity as far as budgets go to do these types of things. And we just don't have that right now. And that's a big concern for me, is putting ourselves in a situation where our budget is constrained and we're pulling people and thinning out their activities that they're already thin on, and impacting the efficiency of our folks here in the city.
I share that view. I am just going to tell you that number one, bans don't work. And number two, we're chasing our tails right now because the demand is there. So what we had talked about is we don't want to keep incentivizing a black market. And you know what we're doing? We're exactly doing that because we're actually right now punishing the compliant properties because they're the ones who are remitting the tax. They're playing by the rules. And it's just said, there's 500 and we have about 110 that are licensed. So bringing the compliance software is the only way I know to reduce the burden on our police department and on our community and economic development, because they can look at the dashboard, they can communicate, they can talk to each other. Now with the recent change in the law that you can use the listing as long as you have something else, which can be a screenshot of a review. I don't know how to orchestrate that kind of process within our city without creating a huge burden unless we have the compliance software. Back to Councilmember Holton's point, remember when we started this whole process and I said, we should know the end, we should know where we're getting, where we're going to end before we begin. And so we had talked about what our short-term rental policy objectives might be. If you want to go back and revisit that, that's fine. You guys, we're not doing anything. We're allowing a black market to exist and to be a problem. You saw the map. Most people don't even know that short-term rentals are actually being conducted in their neighborhoods. We can continue to just think that we're Mayberry, and I don't think we are. I'm just trying to find where the tolerances is, where it can allow for some without overrunning that neighborhood character that we're trying to preserve.
Didn't we already do kind of rough numbers on this? Maybe this would be helpful for all the council members to see some kind of a performance, so to speak, on the rough numbers, that if we incur the $22,000 Granicus purchase and then we amortize that, so to speak, over, a 12-month and 24-month period, the kind of revenues that we see coming in associated with being able to not only understand where we are with short-term, but to really put together a program that incentivizes homeowners to do the lawful thing. If we're on if we can show some kind of a financial path for the city to cover the costs of this, am I wrong on $22,000 a year? Am I getting that
No,
figure right?
actually, I'll just bring it up right here. We had estimated that we would need 40 new licenses at $520 for license fees. It's my opinion that whatever the license fee that we charge should cover the annual cost. And in the Henderson, where on this short-term rental, they charge $848 annually. So 40 additional licenses at $520 would cover this, not including what we would then collect in TRT, because now we know where these short-term rental properties are. Even the illegal ones with the address verification, we can go after and say, hey, state, you owe us that money, because we're not getting that, because we don't know
Yeah.
where they are.
Yeah, I think as long as it's not, I appreciate Councilmember Newell's comment, but I think that if we see a way to cover the cost of this, as I have said at previous meetings, I'm in favor of making this measurable, helping our homeowners to be lawful. I think it only improves the safety and the quality of all our neighborhoods. It's not that I'm in favor of short-term rentals, and I am very concerned about the lower enrollment going on in our schools. If there's one thing I've always stood for is, children having a school nearby. So but I think that there's ways to not only support homeowners who are in modest homes to be able to retain their home ownership or get into a home in Cottonwood Heights, but also I'm happy to hear that we're looking at putting some monies into affordable housing projects, because as we do see density coming in on our arterials, such as Fort Union Boulevard, we want to make sure that the product is quality and that it is attainable for families. That can't be underscored.
I'll kind of throw this, oh, go ahead, man.
Well, I was just going to say a couple of things. So Councilmember Highland mentioned a doodle poll to give your availability for the Granicus demo. I would encourage you to do that so we can get that on our calendar. I think we could ask them a lot of the questions that we're maybe asking. And if I can get a couple more questions answered, a 1-year trial versus do we have to sign a longer contract?
We do not.
We could do a 1 year.
I already know the answer to that. That's
Okay,
correct.
so I would probably, lean to doing this for a year, and seeing what type of revenue we collect we can collect from people who are in current. Anyway, so I don't want to go over the same point, but anyway, that's how, go ahead, Councilmember Newell. I would be in favor of getting to this training.
Mayor, can I add one more thing to that list?
Yes.
If we could get a guarantee from Granicus or whoever it ends up being of how many short-term rentals are in the legal zone, not an estimate, but a, factual, today there are X active in this zone, so that we have a real idea of what, the revenue that we could get in. I think that answering that question would be helpful as well.
Give us that, Councilmember.
If we gave them addresses, possibly, you got to remember that what they're pitching to us is that they give this to us when we purchase the software. That's part of their,
Yeah, we wouldn't
right?
need no specifics, just a number.
So, and then, sure, why don't we ask them that during the demo?
Great.
A couple of questions. How would we be able to enforce folks based on our licensing moving from compliant to non-compliant? That's going to happen to some extent. And then, I have no issue with trying for 1 year. If we can figure out how we can enforce it and what the burden will be on staff, that to me is just really critical. Because that
From
is a
what I
cost.
understand, and Councilmember Highland can speak better, is that Granicus thinks that by them sending letters saying, we know you're operating a short-term rental in an approved area to operate one, they're kind of doing the enforcement with not a whole lot of our time, whether the person that says, oh, okay, I better get into compliance. That's a different story, but so am I wrong in saying that?
No, they have a track record of bringing 90% into compliance just by sending letters,
Without the city getting involved.
without the staff having to get involved. And so then they said expectations are that you'll have to prosecute the most egregious cases, those that create the largest nuisances and are the most defiant landlords, which they say are 2 to 3 cases annually. And we have multiple surrounding communities. Mike Johnson and Ian Harris did quite a bit of research in the resort areas in southern Utah that said they've been very successful with the compliance software and an ALJ. And some prosecution is necessary, but not a burden on code enforcement.
So in your opinion and the others that attended this meeting and got this training, the 40 additional folks here that are needed to bring us into a balance on this cost, have you identified that group of folks? And
Well, I can tell you where the number came from. It came from Jim Rock, who is the president of the Canyon Racket Club condominium, and he said at least half of those people who are in our HOA are not licensed, and that would be at least 40. So he said there are actually people who move out of their condominium in January, February, March, go live with a family member somewhere else, and they rent short-term rental their property for those 3 months, and it completely pays for their entire mortgage so they can live for the other 9 months of the year. So that number came just from Jim Rock.
If Granicus can give us that number, Councilmember, without telling us the address, it'd be enough for me to know how many that are out there to.
And the other thing, if I can add, I still do go back to wanting to feel more comfortable with the policy decision that we're going to make or wanting to make. As was mentioned earlier, I do want to get a better sense of where we're trying to go. If we're going to start walking down a path, where are we trying to walk towards? And if I can get a little more comfortable of where we all stand, then I feel it's more worthwhile to start going down this path. I just don't want to look back and we've invested resources and we start pushing towards a policy that maybe I'm not aligned with. And that's, again, just a personal approach.
I almost see this as separate issues.
I agree.
I think I think our residents would want us to enforce those who are operating, either not paying us
That
or,
can be
yeah, that we can.
licensed that are not.
Exactly. So versus the policy. So I think I've always been, if we can enforce first, then it will give me a better ability to determine policy.
And Councilmember Holton, to your point, let's say that we get the compliance software in place and we find out there are 160 in these 3 large complexes that can be licensed or are seeking licensing. We can set our annual licensing fee based on those numbers. So to me, this can always be a revenue neutral investment. We have no real way of bringing all of these people into compliance without overwhelming our staff in the absence of compliance software.
And I
so that-
appreciate that, and I appreciate the discussion on keeping them separately, but this discussion hasn't really been separate. We've had discussions on ADUs and we've had discussions on whole home versus investment properties, or doing it just during the ski season, or having a long-term rental all year. So the entire discussion that we've had today has not been separate. So I'm okay with having it separate, but every time we talk about this issue, we are talking about maybe we need to add them into different zones, and maybe we need to have an overlay. And so again, just to point out, we have been talking about it holistically.
We have, but we also don't have to make any policy change. We can stick with what we have. And if that's what we find out after seeing, where these are and the impact, we can choose to do nothing. I just don't think we know what to do, and because we don't know what we're facing.
Yeah, if we were to keep it where, the people before us have made a decision on where to allow them and not to allow them, and we were able to bring people into compliance and do enforcement and have it paid for, then it's a non-issue for me at that point.
What I don't think is fair, and whether we don't have time to continue to discuss this, but there are examples like the Canyon Mortuary property where they have a duplex in the back, and they're a commercial property essentially, but not really, with a short-term rental. And should that be allowed? I don't know the answers to all of that yet. I think I'll just leave it at that. I think you would have to dive in very deep, like I have, to kind of understand all the nuances. And it would take a tremendous amount of your time, and I'm trying to bring to the council some information, the best information I can, without burdening you with such a deep dive.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too. Well, thank you, Councilmember Hyden. So let's get this Granicus trial.
Please, because it
schedule.
can be as soon as, this week. So please look at your emails and complete that poll so we can get it scheduled as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councilmember Hyden, for all that work. Okay, the last item, we're not going to need the full 10 minutes, is labeled a conflict of interest discussion. And when I first asked to put this on the agenda, we're probably going to go a different way than I had anticipated. We all sign conflict of interest disclosures once a year. And in that disclosure, we are we're saying that if there's anything that we need to recuse ourselves or at least tell the council that, that is something related to what we're going to be talking about, that we need to disclose that to the council or recuse ourselves from a vote. That's what that disclosure is for. And so I thought it was actually really, really poor form what happened a couple of weeks ago, accusing a council member of a possible conflict of interest. That's, if the council does have questions about other members, that can easily be taken care of, not in a public setting where it becomes accusatory. You can ask the person if they need to, and they can then make that decision. So anyway, I would like to, I'm open for discussion. We can spend, like I said, 4 or 5 minutes if you'd like to add something to this to this, but that conflict of disclosure, conflict of interest disclosure that we sign is, to me, satisfies what we should be looking at. So
I'd like to ask a question based on an observation. It was the day after our council meetings that I was listening to the entire planning commission, both the work session and the business session. And before their business session, they actually asked the question, does anybody have any conflicts of interest or ex parte? I can't remember the wording. And I thought it was interesting that, that they would just remind themselves about possible conflicts of interest, and just, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't get a vote. It just means that they could disclose in a public way something that was relevant to that particular vote that day. Why does the planning commission do that?
That's a really good question. I actually reached out to multiple cities to ask, because I was told our planning commission did that as well, and there were other cities, and I couldn't find another city who does that. The fact that our planning commission does it, to me, it's a little bit redundant, because we're signing a disclosure saying that we're doing that. So we're already supposed to be doing that. To add another statement before every single meeting, to me, became redundant, and that's the feedback that I got from almost every other city that I called. They said, well, that's why the disclosure is there. So,
Well, I think since the mayor is, didn't call me by name, but is referring to my asking the question if there was a need for any recusal. And that is that I have also noticed over the years that the Planning Commission regularly puts that forward. And I think, in our time where many people who hold public office also are actively working as lobbyists and actively representing their industries at the state legislature, that it's a fair thing to have an emphasis beyond the absolute legal minimum. I realize that Cottonwood Heights as a city reaches the minimum legal requirement, which is to once a year sign a form indicating that you will be mindful of the conflict of interest. I have held for some time, although I've not brought it forward to the council, that it would be helpful for the council to have a code of ethics. Murray City has a code of ethics which goes beyond what again, the statute is for the state of Utah. And I think that it is a fair thing to make sure that the public can feel comfortable that, its representatives are, being mindful of that obligation they have as public servants to make sure that, we're being as objective as we can be.
Councilmember Newell, any thoughts?
I actually will just say I was quite impressed, and just in the spirit of transparency, that the planning commission would ask that, because of course we do this disclosure. It's not front and center to anybody who might be actually attending the meetings or have an understanding of who might actually have how many people actually take the time to go look up that and grandma request it. So I'm not opposed to it. And I don't know if we need to decide that tonight, but I thought it was actually quite lovely that they would be that forthright and transparent. And that's what I want to be as an elected official, is forthright and transparent.
Councilmember Holton, do you want to add anything?
No, I don't really have anything to add. I think we all have a duty to be absolutely 100% and transparent with any conflicts that are out there. How we do that, I think if we disclose it on a form, if we sign, if we speak before, I think there's no question. I do appreciate you mentioning that, we shouldn't be questioning our colleagues in the moment. That's not appropriate, especially when it's far reaching and dishonest. But I don't have a strong opinion on how it's done. We just have to disclose them no matter what. And that's the bottom line.
Shane, do you have any thoughts? I can see your mind moving a little bit over there.
And too.
It's an interesting question. The requirement for an annual filing of a conflict of disclosure statement by elected officials is a fairly new addition to the statutes. What has been in place longer, and I believe that it's still there, is our provisions in the Municipal Officers and Employees Ethics Act, where in certain cases, if there's a conflict, if somebody is getting paid to do something that is being affected by something that's before the council, why there may also be a requirement to make that disclosure at the time verbally to the council in the meeting time, rather than relying on something that was filed at the beginning of the year. So I'll look
So-
at that tomorrow.
And Shane, just to add one more thought there, you'll see in the state legislature, they don't ask that question in every committee or before every meeting, but you will from time to time. You know, it's where they do an annual disclosure, but you'll have someone that will recuse themselves or in the moment make that statement. So I think you're right of if there's something that pops up that is relevant, right? And there is a conflict in that moment, that absolutely, I think us as council members have an obligation to, you know, make that aware. If that's telling Jared or our colleagues or saying it in a public meeting, I think that's absolutely should be something that does happen.
Yeah, I think that raising the question before every meeting, that isn't required. But I think that what I'm going to determine tomorrow is required is if an individual member, based on what's on the agenda, that meeting feels that there's something that needs to be disclosed, there may be an obligation to disclose that in the meeting, as well as just even though the matter has been disclosed in a form that was filed earlier.
I'll give an example. When we approved the Mott's Landscaping contract to do the pollinator garden, I said, you know, I know Jeff Mott. He's a good friend of mine, and I don't have any financial interests, but I liked the reminder of the Planning Commission. It caught my attention because of what we heard last council meeting. I would hope that this council would actually seriously consider that question, just as a reminder to each, and to show our constituents that we are mindful.
Jane, it sounds like you're going to do some work for us.
Yeah, I'll look at that tomorrow. It shouldn't take long, so I'll send out a little memo. It'll be a short one, unlike some of mine, and I'll tell you what it looks to me like.
Great, thank you, and then I guess we can evaluate. Thank you. Okay, quick review of calendars and upcoming events. On Saturday, August 16th from 11 to 1 p.m. we have our 4th annual Autism Barbecue at City Hall. Appreciate Chief Russo and all he does with that. Wednesday, August 20th at 1:30 p.m. is our senior social here at City Hall. The Bark in the Park, August 23rd from 9:30 to 11:30, and we do that at Mountain View Park. And then we have a mural ribbon cutting at Golden Hills Park, and that's on Friday, September 12th. Friday, September 26th, we have the community block party at Hillside Plaza. Is Jim going to be in charge of that, I imagine? Okay.
I think Sydney's doing it all.
Sydney's doing it all. Okay, great.
Takes on everything.
And then, goodness, we're already talking about a monster mash in October. So October 24th from 5 to 7, and that's at the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center. So we do have an item to discuss in a closed meeting in reference to character and professional competence. So I would entertain a motion to leave our business meeting, or our work session rather, and enter into a closed meeting.
I'll make a motion to move from our business meeting into a closed meeting.
I'll second that. Can we do a closed meeting in there since
We're gonna move into the,
Okay,
yes, it
that would be
doesn't,
great.
it won't be recorded.
I'll second that motion.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you.